Tata Temdina, Japo in some yore, the Congressina, printing chartering, drawing J, charter, the Yamin Table, Tani is on the sound major, but the Yamin Madina yore. The charted the control, the Indian Lama give it in Gokano. They don't chimbore. So you're not Romani but printing, Lama Gaging, Kang by the Trago yore. The Tata Kashegi, oh, Lama Mani, Lama Cheklang Tingores. They didn't go to Jaga to change something, Lama Chektin, and he's hungry by yours. Topchi Kashi, Kaza Kashi, Lama Mabot in go yore. Young Topchi something, Lama Mabot in yours. Top Tantong job was Hataber to Chishu Corres. Get that thing that I am killing over. Topata something that Toya Yoga. Yore, Kong Kaira, Men Tong Shin Pai, Jigga Lama Ngabjati, the Kota Lama Ngabjai was on it. They went around at the Sambat and Hinji Legend and Drivel. Get out the sushi, the Tavalama, the Pinbeb, Roma Printing, Roland J. The Ritachi, the Girl Drama down, the part of Trati Chopper, don't choke away. The Chitake, Jim Datam, Rosom Mambo down the Zohari. Naga Karasaya, your marite. The new unit is what Jim Datam Koto, Muni Sancho Sanyone. There is any passing to Yong Shi, Sancho Yong Shi. Tawa, the top. Gomba the corn, that two bar give us our Jacob, also Hakuritan Jacani, Chuto Zoya, Chuchisa, Jackiore, Sempina Pribata de Chawa Jacob, Dave the Hada Tachibori, Tortini, Tossin, the Trago read.
So this book, the Samantha Bhadra's Prayer, is printed in these three languages, in Chinese, English, and Tibetan. And the reason for having that in three languages is so that you can ask each other questions about that. You can discuss the text with each other of people of different languages. So this is a book of practice. It contains a path of practice from now on until attaining enlightenment. So sometimes people think that if you want to ask a question, then you must ask a Lama on this question, and that is really a very faulty idea, because actually it is better to discuss with anybody. You can discuss and ask questions to senior disciples or any Lama actually. It doesn't have to be anybody, any Lama in specific. So it is very good if the newer disciples ask the older disciples and so on. And also sometimes people think, and then you shouldn't have so many different Lamas, you should just have one Lama. So to some extent that is true. The old Indian Mahasiddhas attained enlightenment relying on a single Lama, but then there also have been many other Mahasiddhas who have attained enlightenment in reliance on many Lamas, many gurus. For example, there is one Mahasiddha, Tangtong Gyalpo, who is really from the Sakya, but he's really accepted throughout all the lineages and very famous. And anyone really acknowledges him to be a real accomplished master, and there are many signs that are still present today, signs of his accomplishment. And so he actually has said, with regard to the root guru, he has said that I myself have 500 root gurus, ranging from butchers to the various other beings. So I have many root gurus. And so that basically shows that whoever possesses loving kindness and compassion can be a root guru. And so for this reason, we have printed this in different languages so that you can discuss that with each other and ask each other questions. And the donors for this booklet has been very kind to produce even more of them, because I myself do not even have enough, cannot even provide for my own food, so I'm not able to do that. but there are donors who really have great bodhicitta and who really understand the qualities of the 6 parameters and bodhicitta, and donors who have realized the view and have meditated, habituated the meditation, and therefore want to put that into practice and benefit beings, and then they start centers, for example, and do many other dharma activities in order to benefit sentient beings. So this book is such a product of such a great intention. So it is a very precious book, and you can really ask anybody questions about it.
그러니까 동담그 제마디라 제 강연에서 다 소속의 명령이 다네. 그래서 소속 제출하고 송더니 마고 송고 요래. 대회는 좀 타도 마탐지가 되다가 냠슬이네. 드니랑 소수 냠슬한테 대라 뛰니 냠리가 좋다. 라티니 그래서 냠슬이 탑 드라마를 막고 도망 많이 받더니 소라. 대라 냠용 드라마를 막고 요래. 대라 때문에 냠리로 소리 막고 차례더니 삭친다 독친. 라서 보통 타가 맹망 보는 거 요래. 좀 타도 마탐지가 좀 타도 마도 소수 좀 타래. 잔네스 거 요래. 좀 타지 마도 감자고 잘라서 감자고래다. 이게 루보 탐지 차저래. 감 때리더니 돈 담으라다 감 담으라래. 난 잘라대 강리. 동담고 대바데 찍는 거고 요래. 대회들이 사기 독진 강제는 폭도 동담고 대바는 로고 그래. 이 동담 대바도 담고 강리용이 들이 담고 사기 삭자터가 자도 지디는 뭐도 그 상기에는 들이 영어래. 들이 대회는 지디 냠전이 탑 잠을 때문에 동담고 때마치 뭐 찍는 지 맞잖아. 이것도 소리겠다. 들이 너트만 보는 거래. 들이 대회는 들이 동담고 때마 사지가 까대. 아게 저 뒤는 저쪽에 저쪽 강을 되는 데다가 마송 강소니 단정 가지고 고바 제주 게님바 된자요래 아니 지자요래 때 가르치는 요리 되는데 독징하는 뭐지 주삼 곰섬 냥이 강그 소니들이 공 파동 쪽과 랍도 너무 반조는 이 차는들이 데려드는 콜로마요. 그 띵하는 뭐 누주고 봐. 감도 주고 봐. 무슨 좋은 고바 탐지는 약간 아니니까 공고가 지슈래. 괜히 고바들이 괜히 그 대거리 공을 나게 공을 줘보래. 이거 공을抓티. 이 로마 탐지 대청을 두대고 산다 혹시. 이 공용이 지버래. 나용이 가야 요 말에. 이抓티 책대 쳐서 나게 토마토 깨게 인지 통나고 되면.
And so, with regard to the ultimate truth, in the various lineages, in the major lineages, it is often given different names. It is called different names, and many times there are different approaches and different conventions and so on, according to the various lineages. So the individual lineage holders have practiced their lineage and have exhibited signs of accomplishment and practice, and then have offered various methods of practice. And for this reason, there have emerged various different methods of practice and different systems and traditions, and many personal experiences of masters. So it is given different names. For example, it is referred to as Mahamudra or Dzogchen and so forth. So these lineage masters have applied various terms in accordance with their own lineage. But in the end, we have to understand that it always points to a single essence. For example, it is just like a box or so. The lineage is just like some individual lineage is like an outer cover, like a box. So if we explain that in a bit simple terms, so a box can have different colors on the outside, but then the inside should be the same, even though the outside might look different. But what actually is inside? So that is what is inside, the content, that is the ultimate truth. And so what we need to recognize is the content, the ultimate truth. And so therefore the various practices of Mahamudra and Dzogchen and so on all have a single essence in the ultimate truth. And originally emerged from the Buddha Shakyamuni himself when he attained enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. So from then on there have appeared various methods of practice. But it is important to understand that all of these various practices, these various methods, have a single essence. If we are unable to apprehend this single essence, then many faults will come from that. Then we might hold biased views and we might hold to our side, and many other faults will come from that. So the ultimate truth is the actual word of the Buddha. And so how I would like to introduce that to begin with is from a recent account when I asked somebody a question and regarding that, and that really summarizes the meaning of the ultimate truth very well. So that was when I returned to Tibet. There is the largest Jigkun Kagyu monastery, the Drupgyu monastery. In that area, the largest monastery actually within China and in India, our largest monastery. There are 700 monks in that monastery and 400 nuns. And so the Lama who has his main seat at this monastery is Chenga Rinpoche. And he really is a very accomplished master in any aspect, whether it comes to his practice of learning or contemplation or meditation. He has all excellent qualities of perfection in all of these aspects. So and he's also actually a very close personal friend of mine. So when I met him, I asked him about the ultimate truth. And so these are the first words I would like to first offer to you. And I, at that time, thought I should introduce that to my disciples, because he really is somebody with great learning and qualities. And so I myself do not have so much learning. So I will first offer to you his words, his introduction to the ultimate truth.
저희 도마 동바 산지 좀디디 사가도 지 종알라 야도디디는 뭐도 좀 참기가 감이 니송 말이 동바 산지 좀디디 야도디는 뭐도 좀 참기가 가게 이게 진짜이 나 마음 걸 인토를 전에들 로마서 소를 때나 대비야 볼 거주 같이 가는 주나 사비제스다 의사 디마세 듣다위 취식 나베니 설라팅장 고월 문의배 맨나 나답니다 네팔사 송 주면송부 등지기 좀 이 컴퓨터 쇼고사 말했어 대송 둘이 대송 보잖아
임버싱아디 아포하고
장대기 이게라 사바셔와도라 들이 토니 이제 되고 도제 다우테소 대송을 송 동강이 대송이 들이 코고대다 송을 들이 라창보 잡지 라서보 들이 동가보 예선제와 판네 들이 주송고 줄 들이 주송고 소화다버봐 들이 주송바래 들이 내마절라 송고 송송할 들이 따와 탐진 니들이 연구요니 사비주라 사드마세 동팅아스니 즉 레벨에서 나와 체중아 니들이 송고요래 들이 니책 사마게 나고 자고래
So this this text, which is in Tibetan, as Rinpoche said that so it was where it first came from is when at the time when the Buddha Shakyamuni had attained in enlightenment at Bodh Gaya, And so afterwards, then gods like Brahma offered him a white conch shell turning to the right and supplicated the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma. And so first the Buddha taught the Dharma of the Four Noble Truths. And so there are some very important verses that explain the view regarding this here in this text. And so in the future it would be good to have this text translated and to give it to the disciples. It really in an excellent way summarizes the view. So here it is summarized in 5 qualities of 5 verses. So wait a minute. So it Miman naktab sana kare. Miman naktab.
Membrate, ta ko lap me ko indi. Mena ko gom ja do indi. Ko ko ran ko gom so so ha ko ti de. Ko sa ko sa ma le. Chi ka ha ko sa ma le so. Ni ko gom ja na 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 so ko la gom ja ko la de gi so na. Mena na na sa ji ja ta ba.
Die relatation na this kala couple that is journal. Ina ta ngati nang sing kurtis khabare ta na. Ya poyong samare. Let's better Rinpoche explain those verses first.
These are the teranga bethoni ko to se. Ko ka kangsong ba te na gi che to je ke te ka le ta pa ja lo le tham yin ge yo le. Ka sa ka yin ge yo ba. Trinity Chumatan de Kori, Trinyamino, and a gilly. And Ganchi Gilly. Then, he Christam Jeji, Chini, Saji Kong Kang, Zupatini, that was somebody else. The Tagate. Same with Nero Chata Topate, that Kong somebody else. Don't down with them, Batona. Don't down with them, Kong Tonga, that's also Terry Chichunga. Chichunga, on it. 생내로 돈좀 대마대 제중아 나들 다들이 사바 시와 두바들어 우선 드마세 바서 뭐니 산지 랑 강주 같이 좀 말이지 내가 하고 또 저기야
so so first, as Rinpoche said, first I will explain now regarding the view, the actual, as it is explained here, as the Buddha had explained, then the actual natural state of the mind. So Rinpoche thought to open it up with these verses because also through the internet many people are listening today. And later Rinpoche will explain also more about the actual practice. And so here, this verse here, first, in this verse here, first the Buddha explains how he had himself realized the nature of the mind. So the Buddha had realized the nature of the mind as it is, and then explained it by using 5 qualities. So these are 5 terms that should point to the nature of the mind. And so these 5 qualities are profundity, peace, non-elaboration, luminosity, and uncompounded.
근데 저들이나 사자체보다도 시에서나 다 강성을 열리네. 나와 샘서 타제지. 그때 취탑지 나와서 나와 샘서 타제지. 남들이 보고는 내려 던져 오리 돼서 저기 세미 동발 타제에서 다 사바지 샤바지 사바지나 그때 취탑지 망보라 하도 자치 못된 사보 무슨 남들은 사강도 찍고 딱 지었다는 것 같으니 대부분 살 남탈살 딱 지었다는 속자 사야통 설망고리 그리 죽지 좀이 그리 삼주동이 삼주열만이 봐라 하자 사바지 탐지 가리를 송 나와 샘스 송지 사바지 자치보리 마찹사요 말이지 시와디나 코 문이지 공부하던 치마를 맞아버리지 요건 치마 틱딱 동주 말이지 주바당 잡아지 딱 끼었다는 이렇게 수정하고도 말이지 주바 잡아 다디 가시 딱 가면 매독들을 다 가시 동반일이 돼 최다른 로를 생문내로 때 말이지 우사와 요리스 대상중 콘데게 최상지 직접으로 우사와 생맘지대 생근하게 우사와들 싸고 가리 따뜻한 소시생을 쳤다나 뭐지 연대지 그 로망상제를 저는 유모바도 끼나 저를 생모실 몇개 네 예단을 해서 신기 시바 싸우고 대냠도 요리지 가리 싸우고 유모바도 각각 싸우고 시고 네 예단을 해서 시고 요리지 따와 마시는 것들 가리지라 오 알았어 다 홍아지 나니 이 코케스 알아 코케 입지제나스 땅아 이제 세상 요다 요디 땅 코가 되게 좋으라 오늘 우사와지가 하고송은 세상 뉴모버 뉴모버시는 로로 동에 싸와 뉴모버 마시나 오 사부람지도 세상에 마시나 세상은 이메가 하고로라 살와디 나오나디 랑도주비 시작 사부 시바사오데 가디어 믿음으로 오사와티 강리데 오사와티 다람지 가르지 누마세 바레지 콜이 니요 말이다 니요 말이지 님이 이치데 님에 봐 가르치는 것도 그러더나 빼는 거 속에 전데 다 생문으로 니스메 바디 이시디 이신 것들은 니요 말이지 오늘 다 다지 니 우리 가르치나 다지는 다지 니우나 문의 생문으로 치니요 그 생문으로 하고서는 적니마도 생문님이 하고 놀아 오 다들 누마세들 니우선 뉴제리 님이 왔던 누마세 봐 제주다 누마세 봐도 저거라 다들 동생아 창물아 무슨 냐들 먹으러 사지 까 무슨 때리 대사도 무슨 광고되나 사치게 니 이제네 땅에서 사자쯤 따왔지 독진이 와서 독과쯤 따와 냐들이 탑날 독진이 토가요 사치가 나로 주로라서 봐 탑람래요 탑대변의 강리 뭐서 니 바조로 오마요 바조 오마디 보바게 말제 크라색 니조 디쇼즈 섬조 디데이 조아조 시요 말 바조 오마라 rambo marzo라 리처라조라 트리쇼지 동요라 나서 마도 소시요 말 주시 자카베 저라 찍을 나가 자조도와 오마 찍을 쇼 처란 드라마도 탐 드라마도 다신데 조 이제 오마 찍발이 들이 하고 그러더라 라 가나네 드라마자 들이 되게 마보지체나 다든 주마시 바디 대하 고선을 가리지 듣다버리지 듣다버 가르디나 드링 소 대는 코와 될신 대화를 차 동에 당 드리 되게 단 좋아로 가사가 꼬라지 않더니 비동에 용고 요리시 예분 내로 대시라 대삼지 주마다번 통고 요리 다 듣다버리 대 시송선들이 동에 찍자고 말이지 동에 매번 대화 좀 용고 요리시 다 듣다버리서 저는 특히 도들이 얘기되는 방법 요리지 이 절마섬 다 가고 요리 동 받쳤더니 너 요리 이 돈이 락받던 키보를 못 지다리 요리 다음라만 얘기 적편도 공남만이랬더니 미소까지 참아를 잡자고 해서 나 비자 그냥 시험을 하는 속도면 나 그때 줄라마지를 지네 이제 요리들 그들抓着过来的那个냠들이다 대다 하고 니지 되게 냠들이다 다쳐도 시행인지
So it summarizes the meaning of Mahamudra, and in Mahamudra terms we usually say first you need to resolve that all appearances are mind. So all appearances are all the phenomena in samsara and nirvana. They're only appearances. They merely appear that way, but actually they are not separate from the mind itself. And then, having resolved that point, next we resolve that that mind itself is emptiness. And so this is how we look at it from the perspective of practice. So to explain those 5 terms here, these 5 features of the nature of mind explained here, the first one was profundity, profound. And so there are countless phenomena in samsara and nirvana. So their extent is profound. They are vast. There are countless phenomena. So they're extensive and vast. For example, if we just look at this planet, our Earth, it is so extensive. There's all these particles, and then there's all these beings with and without a body, millions and billions of beings. It is just beyond our imagination even. It is too vast. So that is what is meant with the vast and profound. And however, no matter how vast and profound it is, it all arises, all appearances ultimately arise from the mind itself. There is nothing that is not pervaded by the mind. So that is the profound vastness. And then second is peace, or like pacification. And so that is the pacification of all grasping at a substantial reality, and the grasping at any fixations within the mind. Its meaning, the natural state of the mind, cannot be shown. So all grasping is pacified. And then the free from elaboration is that it cannot be understood by means of the intellect. So one cannot understand it by investigating its nature with the intellect, so beyond elaboration. And then luminosity or clear light is, and sometimes people fall into this nihilistic view and say that nothing at all exists, everything is emptiness. So that the luminous nature of the mind refutes that view. It is not just nothingness, but it is clarity. It clearly knows. So luminosity, it is luminous. And so all the phenomena in samsara and nirvana appear as a manifestation of this luminous nature of the mind, arising as a reflection of the mind. And so we can understand it by observing our own mind. Very often it comes up in conversations with disciples. You should look at your own mind when an afflictive emotion arises. So somebody who knows the nature of the mind will recognize the affliction. For example, anger arises, and when one recognizes, then the anger arises within a state of clarity. So clarity here means that you clearly discern that anger has arisen. You clearly know that it has arisen. So you can discern the awareness from the anger. It arises simultaneously. So it does not just arise in unawareness. Now, somebody who doesn't really understand that, the nature of the mind, when anger arises, what arises to them first is an I. First of all, there arises self-grasping. And next, the other person, him. And then one thinks he is mistreating me. So of course I am angry with him. And that is precisely what creates samsara. So when one understands that, one sees the anger arising or any of the other 6 afflictions, and one knows this is the root of the 6 realms of samsara. So the anger and so forth arise within a state of clarity. And when it arises within clear awareness, then the anger will naturally collapse. So that clarity is also what we call the discriminating knowledge that knows what to do and what not to do, that discerns. And that awareness is always there and it never disappears. So that is the luminosity. And then what is the nature of that luminosity? That is the fifth feature, uncompounded. Uncompounded means it is non-dual. There is no division. So we call it the non-dual primordial wisdom. Within that wisdom mind, there is no division of two. So why is it that we perceive self and others, the duality of self and others then? To somebody who has understood the nature of the mind, actually all that appears is two bodies, two forms, but never two minds. There is no duality in the mind. And that is why it is uncompounded. Once there are two, once there is a duality, it is compounded. And because the nature of the mind is non-dual, it is uncompounded. So of the five qualities, uncompounded is its greatest quality. It gathers within this quality. So, and these are the words of the Buddha, which help us to practice Mahamudra or Dzogchen. For example, Mahamudra is taught on the basis of this view, and then also Dzogchen engages in various different practices that are called Togal or leaping over, or in the Mahamudra we have the 6 yogas of Naropa and so forth. There's many different practices, different methods, but they have a single view, a single essence. And for example, in Tibet we process milk, so we take a cow's milk, and then we first take the butter out of the milk, and then we make cheese, and then we make some yogurt. So we are able to make these 3 items out of milk. But you can see how much more it can become in your country, for example. You already make at least 100 different types of cheese out of milk. So that's just the cheese. So it is still from one milk you can make such a variety of different goods. However, it comes from a single essence, and that is what is meant with the uncompounded. And so if you understand the uncompounded nature, so next in this text the line says, it is like nectar. So normally we are attached to, cling to samsara, which means we are attached to happiness and we have an aversion to suffering, and in being tossed by these attachment and aversions, we wander all over in the 6 realms in samsara and experience much suffering. But once we understand the nature of the mind, we will see all as an illusion. And to understand the illusory nature of samsara, of suffering, that is what is like nectar, that is like nectar. And realizing that all suffering will fall apart. And what arises then is the great bliss that is free from all suffering. This in brief summarizes this section of the text here. So it is difficult to translate it like straight into English, but this is the meaning of it. And also later in the break times, you should ask questions, especially to Ken Rinpoche here, and also we have another visiting Lama here. So the 2 of them, you should take the opportunity and ask them your questions in the break time. Because I actually do not know the scriptures so well. All I really know is the 37 practices. And also what I've just shared is just the account of my own question to this Lama. And so you should ask them your questions later on. And what I will share with you is more some practical advice. I know not much about the scriptures, but I do know a little about the practice itself, and that is what I will share with you.
The Nani Tata Yamichi Tamjika Teta Hagotoba Kanidina 우사와 느마세바 너고 특별히 공그 사파 혀바 두바탄 트라바 때때도 고카보 요래 롱다를 관라 말이나 우사와 느마세바 내니 고나 리티 니바 가레리디나 오다 너다 와시 대여서 동들 고나 그리고 다다 냠치는 베탑 잡고요 말이 되나 너무 우사와 시바가 강리 오 랑가스는 게임이 또바 강사 시바 전에 내들이 데려다는 건도 보면 이제 즉 시바 이제 즉 가리는 저기 어디 시바사 어디든 저기 시바사 어디 내록 똑바 되라 시바사 어디 내록 될 때나 시바사 어디나 사람이 하고를 사람이나 나도 가서 한번 하고 와. 내 시당리 내 삼지 내 개발은 뭐 개발 나도 가서 하고 되게 싸와지. 사람이지 딱게도 동바들이 시와지 동 시와지 다 무좀해 봐. 요 이거 탈 잡아들 뚜바도 잡아지. 야무리 요데 맹딱 사오나 딱 뚜바요래. 야무리 미데 타제 그래. 요미 랍토고 요 말이. 요 되나 누구 눈부터 사요 말이 나카다가 차대요. 사람이 딱겠다나. 가야 맨독라면 거요리. 맨독 되나? 오, 좀 맨독 속을 랍서. 속을 랍도 되나? 오, 맨독 속을 삽기 시바상 요리. 되랬더니 다니 요 말이. 사람이 동바동바랑 사와지 도스. 랑랑 하고는 하고 그리고 님에와 대하고는 되게 세분내로 됐다버리스 오사완 드마세바데 님에와 고주 공기 님에와 통주 통기 님에와
So regarding these 5 words, these 5 qualities, from our perspective as practitioners, which are the ones that we can understand from our perspective? It is the last two, the luminosity and uncompounded. The other 3, profundity, profound, peaceful, and free from elaboration, are more difficult to understand unless one really applies them to reasoning and the scriptures and so on. But just from a practical perspective, we can understand luminosity and uncompounded, and also this term nectar-like. And so these 3 will be sufficient for us when it comes to practice. So the first one, luminosity. Luminosity, clarity, means it refers to the clear awareness that recognizes whatever arises in the mind, all thoughts, virtuous thoughts, non-virtuous thoughts, whatever arises in the mind. And that awareness is always present. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it is referred to as the single basis. So how is it a single basis? It is the clear awareness that never declines, that never ceases. That clarity, that clear awareness that is always there, that is the single basis. So when you look at that clear awareness, the nature of this awareness, clarity here means it is clear because it has a knowing capacity. It knows what arises, it knows whatever thought appears and so forth. It knows, for example, this is anger, this is love, compassion, a virtuous thought, a non-virtuous thought. It knows, it is aware of all the thoughts that arise in the mind. So that is the clarity. And then when you look at the nature of that clarity, this clear knowing capacity, it is empty. And in that sense also peaceful. There is nothing that can be identified. It is ungraspable, beyond the extremes of existence or non-existence. So therefore also free from elaboration. Because once we determine it exists, it is already an elaboration. So we try to define it either in terms of existence or non-existence, but it cannot be defined in such a way. You cannot say that it exists because you won't find anything to point your finger at. It is like space, but it is also clear. And when you investigate it, when you look at its nature, then there's just nothing there. So you think it is not there, it does not exist. But then who is the one saying that it doesn't exist? That awareness that thinks it doesn't exist, that is the clarity. So you can't say that it doesn't exist also. It is a non-dual awareness. And the nature of this clarity is emptiness. The nature of emptiness is clarity. It is an experience that you can only personally experience and know for yourself. And when you experience it, within this non-dual nature, there is no duality of someone who knows and something to be known. That is the natural state of the mind. It is clear and it is uncompounded, non-dual. There is no duality of someone who knows or something to be known, or someone who sees and something to be seen.
대외가 다다 드는 것이 생각 내용데 단나 것도 보면 이게 기바데 어디 혼데 자체도 치나 디즈니 로리 다리 사똥을 빠사똥 되라 사람이지 랑 고시지 마데 또만 남카다고 차디는 되게 남카를 니 요다 매상하다나 그 남카니 요로 말 변라 변라 범바동바니나 세 범바니마도 남 동바니데 범바당 동바지 동바니 니요 말이었어 대매 바데 지나들이 뒤에 속에 하고나 그것도 뭐라 하나잖아 대니 르나 사제에 대해서 생물 속을 통나 상제에 마르크스적인 고안 참데 상가리 상송 니 녹선 저바데 니 녹선데 저바데 데 마르크바리 가래 말니 매와데 마르크바 니 매와데 마르크바 하마오 니 녹선데 니 매와를 니 요바는 저바데라 담이 다던 저바데 우따데 마르크바리지 세람도 이미 이시라서 작님은서 세는 니요 말이지 세는 님이 왜 주다다 가자니 진이 류지레스 레다데 가카레 레다 니모베 나가나도 뭐 가카리만 세 영내도 책임 마시나 들이 셀류 마다바 하고 런드제와 낭심이 나도 계속 봐 하고는 델리집에 차당 똑바탐지야 들이 정말 싫다고 요래 대회는 들이 덧다워서 능이 매봐 나도 능이 매봐 좋다고 요래
So, according to the Samantha Bhadra prayer that we have just read before, the nature of the mind is a single basis. And so, therefore, no matter how vast and extensive samsara and nirvana might be, they arise from the single basis. They have the essence of the single basis, which is a union of clear awareness and emptiness. So we can recognize the clarity, and clarity is this clear knowing mind. Emptiness is its empty space-like nature. And so within that we can understand its non-duality. When we look into space, then think about it. Can there be two in space? Can there be two space? So clearly within space we cannot divide space and find two. Or just like when you have two vases that are empty, the outer appearance are two, there are two vases, but their inner emptiness is the same. There is no distinction, there is no true emptiness. It is the same. So in this sense you can understand the non-dual nature of the mind. So according to the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, when you recognize it, you are a Buddha. So when you see the nature of the mind, you are enlightened. And it says, when you do not recognize it, if you're unaware of it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So what does it mean to recognize, or when we attain enlightenment, and we clear away ignorance? So this ignorance is, or unawareness, is to grasp at a duality, to perceive a duality, when actually there is no duality. But because we are ignorant, we are unaware, we do not know that. Because of unawareness, we perceive a separation, a duality, when actually there is no duality. And therefore, unawareness perceives a self where there actually is no self. And so when you recognize the natural state of the mind, it is non-dual primordial wisdom. So, for example, the 7-line prayer of protection to Tara says the self-arisen mind is non-dual primordial wisdom. So although we appear separately, it is only our bodies that are separate. And due to that, we have separate karmas, we have different afflictions and thoughts in our mind. But the basic nature of the mind, the basis, is a single one. So if you know that, you recognize that the body itself lacks inherent existence because it is a compounded phenomenon. And the inner mind, when you recognize the thoughts and afflictions within the mind, you recognize their lack of inherent existence, then all thoughts of attachment and aversion will just collapse. And that is what is referred to as nectar-like. Nectar-like because that understanding clears away all suffering. It has the power to eliminate all suffering.
대주 세군내로 코라시 통나 오 세군내로 따뜻하다 동남 갔다는 통나 대니는 상계대 대마타도 상계에서 대마타도 하고 상교 강송되나 오 신우내로 님도 니지 상송사나 세군데 봐다 나이 있은데 나이 있는지나 인자 봐도 상송사나 샘도 찍다 마디나 나 샘도 가리도 나 찍다 마디 또 샘도 싸워더라 내가 찍다 마디나 그래 샘도 나과 제배가 가리 차로라 오 요미 똑똑 치는 마당 싸워지가 하고 싸우면 이제 동반 남과서 뛰어나 내사 동이와 카마다에 제 맘에 마성들이 샘 남과다 왜지 제지 셉다 남과 체면나 죽을 놈도 저 봐야 되면라리 바케 샘 남과다 왜 삼을 가도 하고라 다주 산지 취적 것이 와서 하고 그러지 때까지 죽은 남과다 예비 장소 그래가 기도와 죽은 남과다 왜 송을 하지
So when you observe the mind, the nature of the mind, first perception of I will appear. So you will perceive it as I am watching my mind. And so when you then continue to observe and actually see the nature of the mind, you become aware of the actual nature of the mind. It is clear and empty, abiding like space. So therefore it is said, when you become aware of it, you are enlightened, you are a Buddha. The instant you recognize it, you are aware of it, you are enlightened. So what is cleared away, as this term enlightenment implies, clearing away, What is cleared away is all dualistic grasping, because by seeing the natural state as it is, there is no duality there. So all dualistic perception of self and others is cleared away. So look at the mind, how it is when you do not grasp at anything at all. It just abides with clarity, and not any different than space. When you do not investigate it in terms of existence or non-existence, and you just abide without grasping at anything at all, you recognize the clarity, clear awareness. So you recognize that clarity and emptiness, or the space-like emptiness, are an inseparable union. And then you just abide within this nature. Milarepa had said, when you recognize that mind and space are not different, that is to actualize the Dharmakaya. And so when you see the nature of the mind as it is, then you understand the Dharmakaya of the Buddhas. The Dharmakaya refers to the space-like nature of the mind.
Tene te chuko nakwata wa te tawa yena yang soso ke chuko nakwata wa te tola tene se yenang ka te mi do yo mari de logo jato ta ves o logo jato ta ve dira jato no toya yori kado kasi ba da yori de jato de ubo ta chema mata pares ubo ta chema mata pares 오 다다 저기 칸이 무보도 지말이 내발이 내발인데 네가 되니 다 정요래 근데 내발 가리실 정도는 다 레가 터버지 레다 박착 꿈도 뭐 나는 니소네 니지 때바 박착지에서 다지 니지 저다 내발지 제가 뉴무가 남아나서 지 이 차당 또 봐서 레가 박차지 뜨기는 샤디오나 이레 박차지 레다 박차 담게 넘지 드림에서 그래지 레사 받은 넘다 그래지 따뜻한 상황에서 드림에서 그래지 이 넘때 맞아 봐서 드림에서 내게 그래지 이 박차지 세 성찰이 세 대신이 뭐고 제시오 말이다 제시면 동도 오 레다 박차가 저랑 산촉 생각나오라 다시감 고다시감 샤도로스 다한테도 뉴보버 박차라 다 뉴모 소소라서 니송송 니몽톡 송고나서 띵고 송소라서 봐 라가레가 내가 로로 나과 뛴다고 샤도로 왔대 샤디와디 뎀바이나 딱발 대거를 왔어 딱발 대거 말았어 무슨 millions 뭔데 딱발 대거 말았어 파티로 자연 자 얘기요 말이 소술에 딱 박차마도 봤다 내가 너 잘니 치지 나와 찍장 나야 요 말이 다다다 말하고 말하는 다 샘도 셔요 말 다 고자로 왔어 대회나 또 동담 사족선 또 뭐나 다오 고접 사족선 상계고는 삼첩선 거래지 사첩선 거래지 상계를 가려줘 다호주 나지 있었던 것 상고래 나지 상고래 대주 이집을 로지 딱 말수 있는 거래지 나지 로지 참아 파상 님지 저쪽으로 생기를 피고 삼지 로지에서 말하는 다 중이 나를 달리 대주주 샘들 루루 자체모 차대 거래지 지금 생고 나시 다나 다들이랑 과다버디 하고 특별히 당보 고접 산적선나 랑기디로 참아 파상 생길 피고 산들과 싸와 가르치 다다는 게고 우리는 초고요리 라그를 느끼고 생구등이 당연히 생 이를 피말 갈 피고 산들로 때마다 고접 산적선 게요래지 대지라더니 생구 나는 대값 대라는 생서 딱 이제 또 뜻이나 갖다가 쳐야 되지 너블리 잡들 생구 총총들 너블리 피고 산 대값이 생구 내려올 때나 생구를 아시 싹동나고 하고 오 무슨 자체고 차도 적되나 다 싸우랑 지도 때나 때 나갔다가 쳐야 되는데 다 땅을 맞춰봐 하고는 들이 니스도 배치바지 파장니 니스 매비지 다 생인이 내록들 님이 봐 하고는 동남사촉선지 사촉선보다 사촉선도 만들어 동남사촉선 또야 요 말이지 대외에 동고도 사촉도 같이 이제는 또 비적거리 다디는 다기 니디는 때 맞도 말이지
And so when you realize the space-like Dharmakaya nature of the mind, then still the outer appearances will not just go out of existence. They appear as the Sambhogakaya, which appears like a rainbow in the sky. You can see the rainbow clearly, but also it lacks any substantial true existence. It is because we hold this world to be true, we grasp at its substantial reality, that we continue to be bound in fetters. So why is it that we hold this world, this appearance as to be true? It is due to our karmas, our karmic imprints, our habitual imprints, that things appear to us this way. So the Samantabhadra prayer had also explains that it is due to dualistic grasping, the solidification of dualistic grasping and habitual imprints. We grasp at the duality of self and others, and due to this belief in the reality of self and others, we give rise to many afflictions, and with many afflictions we engage in much negative karma, many negative actions driven by attachment and aversion. And these imprints of these afflicted actions then appear to us just like in a TV, like a film appearing to us. Or it is just like a butter lamp. The karma that is accumulated is like the oil in the lamp, and the flame itself are the various appearances corresponding to the oil. And the flame will remain until the oil is exhausted. But whenever the oil is exhausted, or whenever the karmas and imprints are exhausted, Buddha nature still has remained. It always remains. Buddha nature is beyond birth and death, arising and cessation. So what continues to manifest for the time being is our karmic imprints. For example, from Bodhichitta, naturally Bodhichitta reflects the Pure Lands and the forms of deities and so on. And if there is self-grasping and imprint of affliction in the mind, then these particular afflictions will manifest, will become reflected. The three poisons, for instance, reflect as the three lower realms and so on. So whatever there is within the mind temporarily will become reflected as our experience. But still, although that is the experience, it lacks inherent existence. If it would truly exist, then it would also always remain. But it never remains. For example, we are humans now, but we will not always be humans. At the most, maybe we live about 100 years. But then, whenever the karma and the imprints of that human existence come to an end, then nothing of this life, of this world, will be left behind. We can understand this also on the basis of our dreams. We can understand how the mind does not cease to be, does not die. And realizing that is to realize the ultimate bodhicitta. But in order to realize the ultimate bodhicitta, we must first develop the relative bodhicitta. And that is necessary in order to attain enlightenment. So when attaining enlightenment means to completely clear away all dualistic grasping at self and others. When the grasping, the perception of the self is cleared away, then the mind turns towards all beings and only cares for all beings. So what we first need to clear away is our selfish mind, our self-cherishing attitude. That must be cleared away. And throughout the 6 times of day and night, you should always think, may I benefit others, only be concerned about others. And when you continue to do that, you will slowly free yourself of the selfish mind, which will make your mind become very relaxed, at ease. And at that time, when you look at the nature of the mind, you can clearly understand its space-like nature. But in order to see that, first it is essential to cultivate the relative bodhicitta. First, we need to clear away our self-cherishing mind. And we do that by cherishing others, by our wish to benefit other sentient beings. And while we do that, in your activities of body and speech, the outward activities, you should continue to do as you have done so far, because you still need to work and sustain your body. But within the mind, you should always be concerned about others and think, what can I do to benefit others? May I benefit others? And then eventually, relative bodhicitta will be actualized. And when it is actualized, then you should observe the nature of the mind. And at that moment, you can clearly see the space-like nature of the mind that pervades the entire universe. So it is realized from within a moment of altruism. So when this altruistic thought of benefiting others arises, then you should look at the mind, and then you may understand its nature of clarity and emptiness. And when you look at this altruistic empty mind, it becomes so vast. So that is the space-like nature that is clear. And so, first, and then, so based on that, you understand that all appearances lack inherent existence. Self and others lack inherent existence. And then finally, you realize non-dual primordial wisdom. And that is the ultimate bodhicitta. However, without first cultivating the relative bodhicitta, it is impossible to realize the ultimate bodhicitta. So the reason why we have actually not yet realized it is because we grasp at the self, and because we grasp at a duality of self and others.
Rekta Mari Cheparson. Rekta Mari Cheparti Kagiyore. Tasanotana. Rekta Mari Cheparti Chimding Chongsum Yore. Cheo de Shivicapsa Parto Tambo is with Nero Tom the material Nero Gomri Condi Gaza tea. 따방하니 말도 당분이 세서나 죽을 상계로 그래. 거기 서상계도 저게도 많아. 상계순 소리 상계순 준 통고 말이야 봐. 그래서 도산의 상계강 다다 상계도 설득독도 가는 연구 그래. 따와 또 어디를 가다 발도 당분이 상계로 그래. 상계로 제답에 상계로 그래. 다다 따와 또 고바 공들 가다디 랑 니 당, 저와 당, 저와 직당 차대요. 발도 당분이 상계다 마당 뭐지지 랭게 제발대 니가 감이 하고 그래. 니속 감이 니속 매바고 사는 거는 니 참나. 자자자가 발도 당분이 상계요. 티 송자라마다베 송송놀이 송은 고베 냠서 용을 하고 그래. 니 세마타도 이제 손 세소나 세탐나 바도는 저아니 이쪽과는 배나 바도는 다들 유지 줄이지 이 말이 너한테 따라오는 거요. 대회나 루드 드라마타들 이 배한다서 그래서 하 총사총 고가 가세도는 판도를 했어. 남들 봤더니 루드 자식들이 상대로 그랬어. semnamkwata chemi tatang che de yore ngupota timando na amere parto tamuri sangye ro yore kap che ote 제발 치워. 럭당 말하기 제발 때. 럭대는 바도 당문이 상지 대니는 상지에 바도 당문이 상지에 놓으라.
And so it says the difference is to be aware of it or to be unaware of it, to recognize or not to recognize it. And so there are three different levels in terms of recognition, where the difference of recognition comes about as a greater, a middling, and a lower. So in the greatest sense, in the ideal sense, one attains enlightenment in the first bardo after one has died. And that will be somebody who in their lifetime has recognized the nature of the mind and who has meditated and habituated abiding within that nature. So they will continue to abide within the nature of the mind, and upon death, after they have died, awaken into the first bardo. And awakening in the first bardo, they attain enlightenment in the Dharmakaya. So this is in the ideal sense. So sometimes people actually ask me in terms of people attaining enlightenment, who actually attains enlightenment, who is actually somebody who has attained in this life enlightenment. Can we see such a one? And so actually it is when you have recognized the view and meditated the view, ideally then after death in the first bardo, you sustain that view and therefore emerge with the Dharmakaya. So someone who has realized the view and then habituated the view throughout their lives, to such a practitioner, falling asleep and dying is exactly the same. Sleeping and dying is exactly the same. And so ideally, recognizing that one attains enlightenment in the first bardo upon death. Or not recognizing that, then in the next bardo. So it is that when you recognize the deep sleep state, the clear light of the deep sleep state, you attain enlightenment in the first bardo. But even if you do not recognize the deep sleep state, my root guru also gave an instruction that actually we can all practice. It is that when you sleep and you wake up, and the moment you wake up, you are able to place your mind within the view, the natural state, and then certainly you can attain enlightenment in the first bardo also after death, when you awaken the first moment within the view. Because after death, the limitation of the illusory body is absent. It is because of this body that we again become confused. So later we are separated from the body. And so being separated from the body, for example in secret mantra terms, it is that one becomes like a Garuda flying away aloft into space. So a yogin whose body disintegrates attains enlightenment in such a way, recognizing the space-like nature of the mind and awakening within the view of like realizing that things lack inherent existence. The mind lacks inherent existence. So that is the highest realization in terms of awareness and unawareness. It is when you are completely aware and recognize, you can attain enlightenment in the first bardo.
Ni toko sa mezin nayang rang pa mani kona rang tawa gana de thamna semai ni so sema thade rang ke tawa ne se toko yore se tu ta khare ja ni sema thado o nga ni chosong son ti min za ba me ba mani na ji se toko ka ji se toko yore o 제답을 가다나 다다야 남도다 뉴무가 대나지 니나지 때서 좀 터고요래 뉴무랑 유버 쇼기요 말에 마셔 봤다면은 누구 때리지 들 상대로 되고 아주 다다 뉴모가 탐지 무시네 라로로 동탐나 때 돈을 다 건너다 보나디나 송고 요리 시당 잡고 집에 발랑 바자라 살로스 르파랑 소선년에 르파랑 소선이 요리 시당 차로는 시당 어디 시당 리지 신기 시바테 오 상계 대리스 난그 상계 대우들이 시바지랑 속성을 시당 중이 봐 다시 막고 말이 무디서는 때 시당들랑 이게 미로 요래 시당 미소서 레사키요면 레마다 피dim 축바연 거요 말이 따르르 내 저거로 와 선대오 제루르 내 저거를 내가 우리 상제대 누기 파상로 요리 내가지 파제 내 저거를 산지 총총으로 왔더니 말
And then in the middling case, and then if you are not able to recognize the luminosity of the deep sleep state, then you should practice in this way. Before you fall asleep in the evening, you should rest the mind in the view, the natural state of the mind, and fall asleep without distraction from the view. And then the moment you awaken, you should awaken within the view again, without any other thought, any other grasping, such as I have slept and so on. Without any grasping at all. You awaken immediately within the view. So that is also a way to practice, and you should practice so that you can always awaken within the view anytime you awaken. And if you do so, then you will also be able to overcome the afflictions and thoughts that are presently within your mind. Just like a dream or like during sleep, you will just let them go, and you will not be controlled by ordinary strong afflictions. So attaining enlightenment or clearing away, what is cleared away when one attains enlightenment is clearing away means to recognize affliction and then being able to let them go, let them become naturally liberated, self-liberated. How to do that is explained in the Samantabhadra prayer for each of the afflictions, for example, hatred or anger. When it says, when strong anger arises, just relax in the natural state, and so that awareness can hold its own place. So, what it means is, when anger arises, you recognize this is anger, and you do not grasp at it. You continue to sustain awareness, and that awareness, that knowing awareness, is your inner Buddha. And that awareness you should hold. This clear knowing awareness you should continue to hold. And then there is not even a need to think about the faults of anger and so on. Only by holding awareness, the anger will naturally disappear. And when the anger disappears, you will not accumulate karma. So if you do not accumulate karma, if you do not act, there will be no fighting, no conflict, and when there's no conflict, then you can just rest at ease, relaxed. So at that instant, there is enlightenment, because in that instant, suffering is cleared away and bliss or happiness expands. So at that instant, you are like a small Buddha.
다다 이바진 되어야 바도 당문이 그 다보세바가로 따와기 바지네요. 드니 내가 이바라더니 이담다 따와 라마라서 버티니 탐나 로컬 상계도 그요래지 되다 이 세마 타더니 랑그티 따와진 거지 탐나 따와진 거지네 드니 라마다 이담지 탐나 바도 이바라 로컬 상계하고 요래지 따고 생각합니다.
And then secondly, now after the first bardo, if not recognizing the first bardo, you can also practice awakening from sleep. you awaken within the view, and then if you're able to immediately remember the Yidam deity or the Guru, then you can attain enlightenment in the second bardo, in the Sambhogakaya, in the Pure Land of the Yidam deity.
Dewe tata wangda tuye kamni jerum kamni lai kopa rata te yang mektam semi chana tiri tela samte ga lagla ichi ki te pa kan rewa musi chana ka tini tata lun de yo be nang sem de lai nawa chana sa lun jo ku yo mari ka tini rang sem de ko ni 노동 잡아 천왕지 차들 남상들이 라이코는 조선 들이 시주요 시야요 말이 들이 이제 대식 뭐 연바당 긴사 족생고 조제네 라이코는 봐도 롱코는 상기나 제록들이 이제 그요래 성코는 이제 대식 뭐래 기 다지메 바그 사족생고 제다로 사족생지나 대사티고 무슨 잡네 들이 봐도 롱코는 상기 들이 배템들이야 버리 되나 자통 들이 그래서 돌랭이 빈지 공나버 저한테 사망보다 이제 오래지.
So for example, when we receive empowerment and we are instructed to visualize the deity at a creation stage, we have a picture, an image of the deity that we repeatedly look at, then close our eyes and have the image appear in our mind again and again. And then the deity that arises in the mind arises due to the relation between the deity that possesses love and compassion and your own trusting devotion to the deity. The deity then actually appears to your mind. So your mind becomes the deity. So it is not the outer form, the body, that necessarily becomes the deity, because it is just an outer, like a vessel. But within that vessel, like water pouring into a vessel, there is the deity. And so the moment you die, you can recollect the deity and then attain enlightenment in the second bardo, in the Sambhogakaya form of the deity. And that is because, first by virtue of your own Buddha nature, and then the condition of self-grasping that is absent, and bodhicitta that is present. That is the actual deity. And when that is present within your mind, then after death you can attain enlightenment in the second bardo, the Sambhogakaya of the deity. So that is a very auspicious point to take a break and drink tea. So also during the break times, you can always ask the many other lamas here who are available to answer your questions.
사지를 줄래요. 남출 쇼고래. 남출 쇼는 되게 강해. 사족 생남반이래. 그 남족부 철들이 주시 받으니 이를 내요 말에. 당주 일이 있는 거죠. 그 대회 대부 사직문에 잘 사과래. 그다가 그게는 정말 이게 작고래. 이게 이제는 배는 사직까지 특이한 사직들이 송절이 다다 배차를 뛴 거라. 대회들이 속에 배차를 조졌더니 이제는 배야지. 기초머리. 그 다리 슈번 초강이나 다리 상계들 내가 말씀적으로 막 쉬고 때는 것은 냠선이 바깥에 롱다르 파트는 사지에서 사지배 사지 용지 빠듬을 봐주나 그 로마카시가 들어요래 사지 용지에서 망보 취소는 잡을리는 사지 직장 통만 명들로 주소리 다 말라리바리 말이들 라고도 말라리바 공유지까지 말라리바들이 중국도 망보요래 사지 밑에 좀 독도 거든가 뒤성데 그래 마다별로 딱지 땅을 대더라고 이래 그 소소한 게 생고 들어봐도 오는 정도 사지 용지 따는 통금 말이 빼는 거 쏟았다나 오 사지에도 사족서 망보 통고요래 비차자도 자와 삼치지 뭐 사지 좀 니들 락발이 되는데 그 요래 한지 용디를 살이 되는 그 요래 육갑반층만 됐다 그래 처지 추중 혼란 됐다 고 리다서 저한 됐다 그러면 이 사지 좀 뒤에 삭발이 되는 그 요래 용디 다시나 됐다 그러네 됐다 그래서 상제로가 랍터를 말 섬체는 이 당보디 봐도 당보디 상제로 이바데 봐도 이바데로 거를 상제로 다 선바데 다당소 냠을 뭐 간다 담지 받쳤다 수번나나 요리 다 되려야 그 독상지 소 나빠트 부는 선거 요리 그 독상지나 따따랑 사지나 따따랑 생기는 저로 빼라 네 쪼바가 동네 대다서 요리 그냥 뭐 두개야 요리
So our source of refuge is the Buddha, and once we have taken refuge in the Buddha, then we also must enter the path of Dharma practice, and that is to practice the twofold Bodhichitta. So the Dharma is really represented in the scriptures. The holy Dharma is contained within the scriptures, and that is why they are said to be even greater than the Buddha. So that is also because the scriptures are used in order to convey the Dharma. So teachings are given, the words of the Buddha are conveyed on the basis of scriptures. So the production and distribution of scriptures is really very important. And so there, as previously mentioned, there are 3 levels, 3 ways of attaining enlightenment. And so from the perspective of the scriptures and logic and so on, the scriptures explain countless inconceivable qualities of the Buddha. And so seeing that, often disciples ask, then if the Buddha has all these great qualities, then we never see such a Buddha in this world. Then where are those qualities? Where is somebody with those qualities? So we talk about Milarepa, for instance, who has appeared in the past, and we say that he has those qualities, but then at the time when he was alive, actually, many people would also look at Milarepa's faults, and so would not see those qualities, even though they were present. So then people have doubts about whether there are any Buddhas present at all. And so that is because if you look at it from the perspective of an impure mind, it appears in this way. Because the mind is obscured, we are unable to see the qualities of a Buddha. So I personally, for example, can see many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It would be okay to even say that he is even greater than the Buddha, because he has appeared in such a time of degeneration where he turns the wheel of Dharma and goes many places. So if you know how to view it, you can really see the enlightened qualities of a Buddha. So we have mentioned that there are 3 levels of attaining enlightenment. First, we have said, is attaining enlightenment in the first bardo. Secondly, in the second bardo, in the Sambhogakaya. And then the third one is where most of us practitioners would fall into, this third group. And regarding that, it is said in the Manjushri Namasamgiti, in an instant you are a complete Buddha, in an instant you are a sentient being. So in an instant you can be completely enlightened, and in the next instant, the next moment, you again become a sentient being. And so this is what I'm going to introduce to now.
이게 대식 정보, 이게 대식 정보고 이게 작바이나 다른 것도 뭐나는 산지 심지 이게 있어. 대마치 산지 좀 이게 심지 남는 산지니 가리 산지 심지 산지 생부 이게 산지에서 오장 로버트 메드 백항리 생부 이게 납도 치고 다버려. 뒤는 생기 담진 차롱 답을 자송스. 사제 담지 잡도 잡아 내요래서. 상지에 사는 이유 말이지. 가리요 말이지. 잡도 치고 요저 잡도 치고 쳐대. 나니요 말이. 그래서 상제 버가 상대들 가래 상성. 무슨 니독 상제 나이 니독 상제. 대상성제. 니들은 고와. 대상성 니스메 베시지. 또 남시의 이식이 제발 강리지. 이식의 상계도 그 요리 남시라 무슨 남시이지. 남시 집안에 강리. 나이 니 나오 가서 또 서로 요즘 나봤던 시와 랑그 대독당 시와 띵모 시바지 시바 때는 남시이지 말이지. 때를 뛰니 나이 니들은 때를 못 보던 팀하나 시니 땅 코와 종은 내 값이 좀 빨았더니 군지 차롬 따면 내 값 차롬 따면 차롬 가세 차돈 쳐도 초라로야 요 말이야. 왜 때를 사자 집에 따와는 까빠 똥이 손 내식 보고 초라로야 요 말이지. 가기서 잡았어. 니 손으로 동장하고 뭐 내나 내식 몰라야 이러면 타도 사지고 뭐 토부 키워야지. 대회는 때 강요리 되는 따라하기 때문에 뭐 샘대리 샘이 예니 상지잖아요. 이 매서 똑같이 무슨 거래. 샘 코랑을 안 시지 상지에서 따뜻히 르다 상지 말코한 르 말니 제발 다 르다 르마니 로차리 빠도 따보니만 로차 르서 바카리 다당서 가자 냠선이 망보요리 랑다버는 때 냠도 대답을 용례지 하고래 랑이 랑그 싸워 요 샘싸워 요거 까비 강이 계속 이게 마비 님라서 가리 용나 대략적으로 자당은 들어오대 이 은혜 맞아 하고 로버를 차라 저대요. 저때는 이 서로 받에 고소 가자대 주마다는 내 값이마도 다도 탐친 뒤제가 남지다 이거 맞다봐. 고네 대를 로버를 코 박차게 손노바 다니는데 코 로버를 끼인다 하면 저 기자다 하면 저 고자면 지고 로버는 남도래지. 로버는 남도지 맞아봐리 로차리 되게 오마가지. 다음을 가자 속지 있음 맞이 이제는 이 말음나 대리죠 나도된 것도 뜨이는 코로나는 작게 오래 뜨이는 라면 대 코로나 대 도와야 요말 비대서 살나 들이 뒤감이 나도 뭐 가르쳐는 상로 오래 상로들이 대화도 동해 탐식 제가 내 밤에 봐서 되고 내 타고 예된 찍고 내 타고 열어 다 냠이 시나 냠이 맞지 하고 이제들이 뭐보다 팀을 시는 자장을 내서거나 들이 누구 하나만은 쪼가 뛰던 놓은 거래. 들이 르르셈이 제용은 샘동이 르코와를 타는 샘코와를 맡아와서 가다지 르코와를 맡아는 샘코와를 타는 가다요 가다를 행이지. 때때는 상기에 끼끼끼끼 다그 나보다 뭐 동아라도 뭐 떼어가면 냠리 탑다 마타고 가네 상제 동해대 상은 상제 동해한테 성모도 대생부터는 내잖아. 들이 동해리 맞이와리 제로야 생 자공으로 차로 뒤에다고 고아다 차나 다 상제제도 생기지 라왕래 다 냠리지 진시 요미 내라니 접으면 뭐 대장 시기 요나 대남지 상제까지 배주당 40% 남았니 배주당나 소주된 생겨보대 타고 열어 생겨보대 상제라 대다고도 고나 들이 냠이나 하자 배고 치고 요래지.
So what does it mean in an instant one is a complete Buddha, completely enlightened? It is because the basis of mind is Buddha nature. This basis is pure by nature. The Samantabhadra prayer says, therefore, Buddhas and sentient beings have a single basis. And also the Buddha himself said, within all sentient beings is the Buddha. And what is meant here is that the mind of all beings, the basis of mind of all beings, that is enlightened, that is the Buddha. But then also the Buddha said, however, sentient beings are obscured by temporary stains. So the basis of mind is like a vast ocean, and the mind of sentient beings is like ice, blocks of ice. The Buddhas abide one with the vast ocean. They're like the vast ocean, non-dual. There's a vast ocean, but the ocean water is not, there's not two kinds of water. There's only one vast ocean. That is the enlightened mind. So attaining enlightenment, which means in Tibetan Sangye, Sang means to clear away, purify. So what is cleared away is our grasping at duality, that self and others exist. That holding of true, holding on to the existence of self and others, that is samsara. And so that is what is cleared away when one attains enlightenment. And between awareness and unawareness, there's a difference between primordial wisdom and the discriminating consciousness. Primordial wisdom is the mind of the Buddhas, and the consciousness, the discriminating consciousness, is the consciousness perceiving the duality of self and others. It clearly discerns the outer objects that appear to it, and also the inner experiences of happiness and suffering, various thoughts. So that knowing mind is the discriminating consciousness that discriminates between whatever appears. And because we then cling to the reality of appearances, we cling to self and other, samsara exists, samsara arises. However, it is only temporary. It is like a temporary block of ice. No matter how much it freezes, how much ice there is, its water-like nature will never be spoiled, will never disappear. When we practice the view of Mahamudra, it says, Buddha nature always remains as it is, unspoiled. Even throughout thousands of aeons, it never changes or becomes spoiled. Even if you spend thousands of years in the lower realms, you never lose Buddha nature. It never changes. And in the end, finally, it attains enlightenment. This is the nature of the mind that we are introducing you today, that Buddha nature. Or in Dzogchen terms, it is referred to as the primordially awakened mind. The mind itself is the Buddha awakened. So the difference is only, as we mentioned before, awareness or unawareness of this nature. And so we have already mentioned the first bardo and the second bardo, ways of attaining enlightenment. And so now the third one, which most practitioners fall into, and also according to how I practice, so it is as following. At the time when the mind and awareness is clear, then no matter what happens, whatever difficulty you encounter, whatever negative or positive thought you might have, no matter how others treat you or ill-treat you, no matter what thought of attachment or aversion or whatever circumstance might arise, you will not cling to it. It will not affect you. You will recognize that no matter what arises is only temporary. It doesn't really inherently exist. For example, if you're affected by another person, you would see that other person like an illusion appearing temporarily. The person just appears for the time being, but essentially the person is a compound and therefore impermanent and lacking any true existence. So only due to a temporary condition, a habitual imprint appearing, harm might appear. Words might be said. Words are said. However, these words are only the manifestation of some temporary thought that already has disappeared again. Those thoughts also are impermanent, and after the words are spoken, the thought has disappeared. It never remains. So, for example, understanding this illusory nature, then whatever appears, you will not be affected. It's just like watching a film on TV. It will not really make you angry. You will not. There's no point in starting to argue and fight with a TV show or a film, and so it won't really affect you. You will observe it just like watching it like a film, and that is what clears away whatever thoughts and affliction arises. And when when all these fixations are cleared away, then no circumstance, pleasurable or unpleasurable, can affect you or harm you in any way, and you just continue to stay just happy and at peace. And so that is what is referred to with the second syllable of enlightenment, or sangye, the gye. You just abide, expansive within a happy state. So this is how you will practice if you know how to practice. Of course, sometimes when people, they know the practice, but still they do not practice. So in that case, even though you know the practice, if you do not actually practice, you will still have the same ordinary thoughts of attachment and aversion, and therefore the result of suffering will still be the same, exactly the same. So there is different types of beings. There's, for example, those whose body is not liberated from samsara, but their minds are liberated. And then there are those whose body is liberated from samsara, but their minds are not liberated. And so enlightenment is, you can be enlightened in just an instant. It is the turn of an instant. So it depends on whether or not you actually engage in practice. If you continue to grasp, although you know the practice, you will continue to solidify into a block of ice and suffer. So that is important to understand, because then you can see that whether to be a Buddha or a sentient being in any moment is up to you. It's in your hands. So you only need to practice, and the practice is the sustaining of mindfulness. So it is really only a question of having or not having mindfulness, just as it is explained in the 37 practices. If you possess mindfulness, then you will act according to the Buddha's words, and you will practice the twofold bodhicitta, and then just remain within a happy and peaceful state and attain enlightenment. And anybody who is mindful can attain enlightenment, be enlightened at any moment. So just to understand, that is of immense benefit to your practice.
Deveta jumde shimashi chepar kudap jumde shibata tondam tawa to dena denya kudap tondam song reso so jini tada kudap jumde lwa me ba song tondam to tongba ni so tel se so mo che ge yore o kudap jumde lwa me ba se tondam tongba ni res ti ha ko ron tin garta sa ni jung yo mari kang ri tin na kudap jumde lwa me ba ya me chi chu 가다 펜싱을 또 펜싱이 냠데 맞죠 세당랑 주 맞죠 파 동나 여자가 설 동거를 봐 좀들어마 매 파지 동설 동거를 봐 동다도 동반이 야 가다 저게 야 따와하고 고만 염용도 요 쪼바가 가는 몇적인 nep지진 오 세당나무 세상도 사축성보다 특별히 세상 잘하는 데요. 그거만 해서가 건거. 그 사축장 뭐 세상 이 가도 그냥 뭐 세상랑 거 동안 저 동바지면 내가 동네 동네 도바자가 말이 도바공거리 야. 대마치 누리가 다 동이 용 거요래 누리 싶어 가자 동이 용 거요래 그런 것도 송황는이다 다 라마 예비진이 강화만 송황는 여러봐 고디지가 가르치 다 저도 공도 좀 잡히는 밑에 강나 출고 해가지고 다 저도 송황는 렘도 다 가르치도 없어 되게 시에나 나서 그때는 지금 뭐들 피요래 강에 레집제집에 무슨 저거 라면 뒤에 다 라마 뉴신이 차원냠도요라 자녀만 뭐 사지 찍바리 독사 찍바리 참 찍바리 레가 찍바리 자녀만 와 배제 못해 하고지 냠데 쳇광 냠도 배 가포 강는데 다운 가라든지 저 소지만 좀제 지라 고마 미리 탐지 다 파츠체 도바자 동자들이 고소 동이지 들이 가라가 마당 찍기로 고마자들이 무슨 아무튼 이게 참말 어떻고도 또고 요리다 무슨 용용제도 최초마선데 저로 냠도 록네 들이 이렇게 고만을 록네 다 마고도 제기 요리 사지뜨기 공지적으로 생분 내놓게 누제 시네 제일 공부 가사데 개발돼서 요리 농이 다니지 토마토 밑에들은 통주지 봐대 이제서 뭐 밑에들은 통주도 오는 종지 대회는 다 담비치지 농이 직전도 뭐 체인데랑 통주도 오는 종지 담비치지 내반이는 냠니 제버 가사는 체인들아지 내가 동이 누게 대화 좋고 요리지 다게 좋고 요리지 체인도 생이가 하는 게 대화는 좋다고 요리지 대회는 지 대화지 족가리지 다 대화지 족 삼바는 이게리지 삼바는 이게는 조파 연구리 조리 연구 요리 점바 연구 요리 조점 연구 요리 때리더니 내가 대화양 레주리 집에 등에 다니 듣고 요리 남다와 또는 유모바 라지라 똥 듣고 요리 유모바도 똥반이 이미 뒤등아 주로 담지게 상호하고 똥네 오 정답도 누리의 똥반이 이제 저 유모바데 거기서 잡냐니 실삼제 똥 듣고 요리 관들 그래서 저도 거들라고 요리 오 저봐 공 듣고 요 네 망고 요라 네 대위는 동담대만 통이 따라 가니 유모가 책 듣고 요리 유모가 책 맡았나 이 주님이 뭐 마성나 들이 따도는 배만 밀려 따와지 또네 고바 곰띠 쪼발 세서고 그래 세 맞다더니 세상도 차도 찍고 곰념이 제고지 세상도 차도 찍고 하나 다 대라 다 답도 성도 맞으래 따와도 고만지 남들로 성 쪼박하간 로요래 들이 다 주점 마시비 중들은 동요래 뒤등 삼지가 상호 동고래지 그래서 따와 공고는 망고요래 고바는 망고요래 이 쪼발세서 봐 쪼박 강에서 해볼까비 다 소수 따와 독세 징이당 체배 시 징이와 강에 체볼까비 다 소수 다 같이 다 하고 그래 동남구대만 통당만 통 동남구대만 같이 통는 들이 유모받다 나도 대서 매박동 듣고 요래 소수 따와 독세 징이당 체세 다 그랬어 또
So on the conventional level, the relative level, we say karma is infallible, and then on the ultimate level, we realize the view of emptiness, and then we say that ultimately the conventional and the ultimate truth are a union, are to be realized as a union. And so that may arouse some doubts in certain people. It may seem to be contradictory, on the one hand, to say that on the relative level karma is infallible, but then ultimately everything is emptiness. So it may seem to be two contradictory things. But if you really understand the meaning, then you will see that the conventional and the ultimate actually are a union and do not contradict each other. So how is that? On the conventional level, we say karma is infallible. So, for example, when two friends stay together, and one gets angry with the other and hits them, then very likely the other person will hit them back. So that very clearly we can see the instant infallibility of karma. But then also ultimately we say it is emptiness. So then in that case, if one of these two people understands the view and has practice of meditation, then when another person gets angry at him and mistreats him, treats him badly, then the person will not get angry because he has practiced, he understands the view, but rather would see the anger as the actual enemy. And knowing that, he will be able to practice patience and will not react in any way, will not act out of anger. Because such a person recognizes that the anger itself does not exist. It is nowhere to be seen. It has no color, no form, no shape. The anger itself is actually empty. And so, therefore, if the cause is empty, then also there will be no result. The result is empty. So, therefore, the two friends will not fight because one of them practices patience. And there will be no suffering. And so then, for example, still it might happen that as a result of karma one experiences a difficult situation, but then it does not create the same suffering. For example, in my case, when I was in prison, during that time in prison, many lamas, many great masters actually came together in prison. And so at that time, some officials would say, so you rely on the three jewels as your refuge, and your entire life you dedicate to the Dharma. Nevertheless, you end up in prison, so what's the benefit of your Dharma practice? And so this is how some people have seen it. But actually, from our perspective, when you view it with the eyes of the Dharma, then first of all, we understand that that is karma. And in that sense, the prison is a beneficial experience. So there was a gathering of lamas coming together in prison, and all the prisoners had the same circumstance. We all lived at the same place, and we had the same work, we had the same food, we had the same rules to abide by, and so forth. And so nevertheless, every Sunday we would come together, the lamas would come together, and we would just have a good time. We would play, and we would laugh, and would really enjoy ourselves. I would drink some water and enjoy ourselves. And then some others who did not understand karma, at the same time would be in misery, and they would fight, and they would beat each other, and they would steal each other's food because there was not enough food to eat. So much misery. And for us, the lamas, for example, seeing this misery of others, sometimes we would collect some of our food together and put it into a bag, like a cotton bag, and then give it to those miserable beings, prisoners. Actually, we all had the same, we didn't have more. We had the same clothing, the same amount of food, the same work, and so on. The difference between us was that some understood the mind, some understood karma, and some did not. And so those of us who understand karma were able to tolerate the suffering circumstance. And so that is where the difference comes about. So therefore also Chikten Sumgön had said, if understanding karma or practicing the Dharma, the two truths in this lifetime and in future life will lead from happiness to happiness. You will transform all negative circumstances into happy circumstances. Because the cause of happiness is loving kindness and compassion. And if you possess that, if you possess compassion, you will be able to be patient, you will be diligent, you will be generous, you will be moral. So you will even temporarily experience happiness only through understanding karma. You will be able to tolerate your own suffering, your difficult circumstance on the outer level. And on the inner level, you understand the nature of the mind, and therefore you also understand the afflictions, the thoughts that arise to be emptiness. So this is something I would like you, Madama friends, to consider very well. Now, how we can reconcile the conventional and the ultimate truth, how we can understand emptiness, the emptiness of karma from the ultimate perspective. And so somebody who knows how to practice, how to meditate, is truly able to empty the causes that lead to negative results. So there are many people who are able to do that. Very often people tell me, I'm actually able to practice patience. So certainly it is possible. Many people are able to do it. And a sign of having recognized, having realized the ultimate truth of emptiness is that such a person will be able to let go of afflictions, is able to destroy arising afflictions. So if you're not able to let go of afflictions, an afflicted state of mind, then the Dharma has not yet become the antidote to the afflictions, because the Dharma is an antidote to the afflictions. And then just understanding the view alone will be of no benefit. It is also important to merge the view and the meditation with the circumstances in day-to-day conduct. So when anger arises, when jealousy arises, when negative circumstances arise from within the mind, so that is a time when we need to apply the view and the meditation. So if we only understand the view, but the view and our conduct still go separate ways, then the Dharma still has not yet benefited us. We will not be able to let go of our afflictions. And so then the problem arises that people feel they're not able to practice the Dharma well. So that is also something to consider. When we practice the Dharma, we understand the view and we practice meditation. There are many who do that. However, it is necessary to also apply that, to merge that with one's day-to-day activities at times when we encounter circumstances, situations that are difficult, challenging situations. It is said when you encounter a negative circumstance, through encountering a negative circumstance, you can see how high is your level of realization of the view. So whether or not you have seen the ultimate truth, whether or not you have realized the view, you can see only for yourself by seeing whether or not you're able to let go, eliminate the arising thoughts and afflictions when faced with negative circumstances. So your level of realization can be measured by looking at how you're able to deal with negative circumstances in a day-to-day life.
Oh, money women home. Oh, money women home. Money women home. Oh.